Hey everybody, this is JDGaming, back today with a deck profile of my new �11𝖊𝖓𝖙 deck. So if you've been with my channel for a while, you'll have realized that some of the biggest videos long-term on my channel have been elemental hero decks. And while I do definitely enjoy playing those, they're not the most competitive by nature because you're kind of limited to a subset of cards. And I've always wanted to play around with different variants, but I wasn't able to find something new and exciting that I really felt was something worth sharing with you guys until now. We finally got some nice new Link monsters. We of course got a sold earlier this year, and we got nightmares like �11𝖊𝖓𝖙 that allow us to make this work in a slightly different direction, abusing 𝕮𝖔𝖓𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖊𝓐𝑠's summoning capabilities and all this other great stuff we have here. And essentially we're going to put up this combo setup. So a sold lets us grab some cards. We basically use 𝗟𝖡 to help get it out so that we have some extra materials to then establish a Proxy Dragon, and then these two classic hero cards. And essentially, 𝗏𝗏 will do all of our disrupting on our opponent, and then �absolute_0 through Proxy Dragon protects our field by Raigeki-ing our opponent's field whenever they try to destroy anything within our setup, which is a pretty nasty combo because again, 𝗏𝗏 will then banish everything your opponent has instead of just sending it to the graveyard. So this is just a fun little thing. How consistent is it? Well, it's actually surprising to me how well it's been working. Considering how long it hasn't been, I'm glad to have something finally working. This is definitely something where as we get more stuff, it'll get better and better yet. So I wanted to go and discuss this thing while it's still kind of fresh and exciting, and then over time, maybe we'll see it evolve. As always, this is going to be a Let's Build, so I'll explain all my reasonings for why things are in here, what I was focusing on when I built this deck. But if you just want to see the list, alphabetical link is in the description box down below. As always, I have that table of contents, so you can go check out the part at the end where I just do the standard deck profile. And then if you have any questions remaining after that, check out the middle where I hopefully answer some of that stuff for you. But without further ado, let's build 𝗏𝗏𝖊𝖏𝖏. The first step of any deck is to establish the theme and our goals, and I already talked a little bit about this. We're playing a warrior-themed deck that's able to go and bring out �absolute_0 and 𝗏𝗏 along with the protection of Proxy Dragon. So essentially just looking at these cards in case you've never seen them before, �absolute_0 is an Omni elemental hero. Essentially it's one of the attribute plus a hero monster for a fusion summon, and anytime it leaves the field, it's going to Raigeki your opponent's board, which is an insanely powerful effect. On top of that, if there happen to be other water monsters on the field that's not this card, then you gain extra attack points. So if you happen to be going against like frogs or something, you'll gain extra value out of those monsters as well. And if you try to tweak this deck and play like Bubble Man or something for more spam summons, then that can get you extra summoning, or rather extra attack points as well. 𝗏𝗏, a lot more people are familiar with these days. Basically, it's a masked hero. You need mass change to summon it off of a dark hero monster, and then as long as it's on the field, it's a one-sided macrocosmos. Your opponent has everything they would send to the grave is banished instead, and if they happen to add a card from their deck to their hand, except during their normal draw phase or the damage step, you can go and banish a random card from your opponent's hand. So after they search, they lose a random card, and that could be a deterrent. If not, it's going to at least keep them low on resources, and they're going to have some difficulty fighting you back. This setup gets bolstered by the existence of course, Proxy Dragon, which is a Link monster. You just need any two face-up monsters to be able to summon this thing, and anytime a card or cards you control will be destroyed by battle or a card effect, you can destroy one of the things it points to instead. And the cool thing is, if you go and destroy your �absolute_0 here, then you get rid of this. It left the field, you Raigeki your opponent's board thanks to �absolute_0, but then 𝗏𝗏 banishes everything, and so you're in a controlling situation where now they've lost everything. You still have these guys probably because they've lost everything banished, and then you can go and win the game from there. And then the last main new monster to talk about is sold. Two Tails of the Noble Knights. 1600 attack, needs 2 warrior monsters for a Link 2 summon, and if it's Link summoned, you can add a warrior monster from your deck to your hand, but for the rest of this turn you can't summon or use cards with that name's effects for the rest of the turn. So you get a free card, and in this deck, just get a water monster, something you could fuse with, go and add something else that you could just have for later, like Honest Neos. There are lots of ways we can abuse that free +1 effect. And then you have an additional ability where you can take an equip spell or more in your graveyard. We're just playing one. That'll let you go, send it to the graveyard to summon a warrior monster from your deck of the same level as the number of equip spells you sent to your grave. We're actually going to be using that effect, and I'll get to that in just a moment. And that basically puts a free monster on your side of the field that you can go and make your plays more consistent with. So both of those effects are only once per turn. But this is the core setup that we're trying to access from our extra deck and that we will try to build our main to accommodate. While it looks a bit daunting to try and get that specific set of cards from our extra deck onto the board, it's very doable thanks to this single card, Vision Hero Vion, getting us most of the way very consistently. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can send any hero monster from your deck to the graveyard, and you can only do that once per turn, but on top of that, you can go and banish a hero monster from your graveyard while you control Vion to add a polymerization from your deck to your hand. This is critical here because it's essentially an overpowered Armageddon Knight, and it beats out elemental hero Blazeman despite its lack of searchability as a vision hero, in that it's able to go and get you poly, which you need to fuse something like Absolute Zero, and it gets you some stuff like Destiny Hero Malicious set up for the rest of your combo. But anyway, this becomes a more flexible piece. For now, this is a basic sequence you'll do with it. Normal summon your Vion, and you're able to send Shadow Mist to the graveyard. And remember, once per turn when she's sent to the grave, she lets you go and add a hero monster from your deck to hand. So you go and add your Destiny Hero Malicious to hand, and then that lets you go and then banish your Shadow Mist from the graveyard for Vion's effect to add polymerization. Notice we now have these three cards in hand and on field off of just the normal summon of the Vion, so the rest of our hand can still add to the rest of this core. From here, though, we're just going to polymerize a Destiny Hero monster with a Dark Effect monster, and these two monsters let us go and summon Destiny Hero Dangerous. So we honestly don't care about the effect of this guy. He's a 2600 defender, so I guess you could play him in defense position if you really want. Whole point of this is he's a warrior monster we summon, and now Malicious is in our graveyard, and we can go and banish a copy to summon a copy, and then now with two warrior monsters, you can go ahead and Link Summon is sold Two Tails of the Noble Knights. So this is the card that lets us go and immediately upon summon add a monster to our hand that's a warrior. So usually something like Honest Neos. This is a hand trap during either turn, so lets you boost a hero monster's attack by 2500. Just grab this thing, you won't need it this turn anyway, but if you want to fuse it, it's a hero monster, so you could still use it for that purpose in this deck because you're actually playing things like polymerization. Anyway, from here, we're going to go and use the second effect, yarding a copy of DDR, Different Dimension Reincarnation, which already has synergy in this deck, being able to bring things like the Shadow Mist or the Mali back. Directly from our deck, we're able to go ahead and summon �11Angler from the deck onto the field anywhere, and from here then we have a warrior tuner monster that could be used for a synchro summon, but it's a water monster as well, and then banishing this Malicious will let us go and summon an extra copy of Malicious. So again, this is not the complete setup. What are we missing to get to here? Well, we need some way to fusion summon, we need some way to get enough monsters for this, which we technically do have, and then ideally we have a dark monster on the field for the Shadow Mist. So let's take a moment here and think of what other cards we need in the main deck. First, we'll talk about the obvious. Having Destiny Hero Malicious as a dark hero monster on our field already means if we're able to draw into a copy of Mask Change, we'll be able to go for our Dark Law. So to make sure we can draw into it as consistently as possible, I like playing the 3 copies of Mask Change because there are just so many targets in this deck that will allow us to reach Dark Law even without using Malicious. You could go and use a Vion, you can go and play it on some other attribute of hero, you could go and use it with just a plethora of things, and so it's a pretty good thing to have multiples of because it's never going to be really a dead card at all. So that's one thing we're going to start off with. That's the obvious portion here. And then on top of that, we'll talk about some ways that we can get that a little more consistently down the line. But that's part of the core that we're going to need. And then on top of that, in order to get Absolute Zero out, we need some additional way of fusing. Notice here that in that combo, I used my 1 copy of Polymerization. If I didn't need it for some reason, I could actually use that to summon Absolute Zero, because since the �11Angler happens to be a water monster, that's an eligible target right there that I could fuse right into Absolute Zero. But to make things a little easier, I like playing on top of these two 3 copies of Miracle Fusion. This is similar to having 3 copies of Mask Change in the deck to summon our Dark Dark Law consistently, Miracle Fusion lets us take advantage of these monsters from field or graveyard to summon the Absolute Zero. And that's really cool because we'll be able to go and use Grapple Angler with our monster, go for something like a Proxy Dragon, and that actually opens up an additional zone that we can then summon our Absolute Zero into and then start building our combo this way. On top of that here, Miracle Fusion just has, a lot of power here. You're able to go and throw down Absolute Zero very consistently this combo, and potentially even use an established Absolute Zero to go into another one, and then that would let you proactively get rid of your monster, Raigeki your opponent's board, banish them if you have Dark Law, and it basically becomes a powerful card no matter how many copies you end up drawing. So definitely like the 3 copies to ensure we do get it out. And then of course, in order to get Proxy Dragon out, we need some way of doing special summons. So one little engine I like doing is one Rhoda along with a 𝕮𝖊𝖓𝖊𝖓𝖙. This is in here just because you're already playing warrior monsters. You're maxing out on 𝗣𝗊𝖏 3 copies, and Rhoda will let you fetch that even though it's not an elemental hero or a destiny hero. So that's pretty good. And on top of that, it can also do double duty, pulling 𝕮𝖊𝖓𝖓𝖓𝖏, which will let us go ahead and then special summon its the other monster. So summon your 𝗣𝗏𝗏 out. Hey, here's an extra monster. Use this with Grapple Angler to go Proxy Dragon at that step. And then from there, you can use the 𝗤𝗟 as a target with Mass Change to go into Dark Law. And that basically saves you a little bit of ability going from there. Then we need some other ways to make sure that this is all a little more consistent. Everything looks like it's kind of hanging by a thread, doesn't it? And at this point it is, and that's why I wasn't certain if I wanted to present the deck the way it is. But there's some other cool things we can do as well. First off, we could play 3 copies of a Hero Lives. This thing I was very hesitant to play. Maybe this is a reason you don't want to take this to an event right now with, the time rules changing and all that. But essentially, a Hero Lives, getting you a free Shadow Mist, is still viable in this deck. Originally, I was like, well, if I special summon Shadow Mist, sure, I get to add Mass Change to hand, and that sets me up for my Dark Law play. But what am I supposed to do at that point? Because now I can't go ahead and use Shadow Mist's effect to add 𝗟𝗟 to hand. Well, remember, if you Hero Lives to summon out your elemental hero Shadow Mist, that will trigger and then allow you to go and add your Mass Change to hand, which is of course, what we need in order to go for our Dark Law play. But then from there, you can still feel free to normal summon a 𝗮𝗏𝗓𝗏 or a Vision Hero 𝗣𝗏𝗏 directly, and that can just go ahead and directly yard Destiny Hero Malicious. You may not get polymerization immediately at that point, but that's not an issue because now we can use 𝗣𝗏𝗏, still get a 𝗟𝗟 engrave. 𝗟𝗟 with 𝗣𝗏𝗏 is already 2 warriors, and you could actually directly go then for your extra monster, your Isolde, and then that'll let you continue the combo from there. So Hero Lives, 3 free copies essentially that help us get our combo set up through a slightly different method. Makes it so you can skip the setup phase of that combo where you no longer have to do this, and then polymerization becomes live then, so you can play it into your Absolute Zero instead. Another alternative that we have is a mini engine involving the pendulum monsters here. So we actually have 3 copies of Supreme King Darkworm and 1 Gate Zero. Essentially, if you draw one of these, you can activate it, and when you scale it, you scale this one directly from your deck. That's cool because since you're not adding to hand, you can't get Ash Blossomed or anything, so it has a little more resilience there. But the whole point of this is you have a scale 0 and a scale 5, so now you can pendulum summon everything level 4 and below. So that means your 𝗣𝗏𝗏s are free, and you can actually pack some other cool cards into the deck as well. But you can already see from here, free special summon of 𝗣𝗏𝗏 means now you have an additional normal summon that helps you put another guy on the field for your Proxy Dragon. On top of that, this engine here actually gives you a lot of flexibility in what else you're able to do. So using just those monsters, now I can feel a lot more confident playing the Predaplant engine. So this is something I had been using a lot on my channel, obviously for Brilliant Fusion, but don't forget, Darling Tonia Cobra can grab any card that involves fusion in its name. So that involves Miracle Fusion as well. So what's normally a power card, you play a 3, hopefully draw into it. You can now pendulum these guys or extra just normal summon them because you pendulum the rest of this. If you hit these guys, you're able to go and fetch your Miracle Fusion and then go and summon Absolute Zero later once you've already used the monsters as part of link summons and fusion summons and whatever. Just use them from your graveyard and you get extra value out of them. On top of that, all of these cards here are dark monsters we're adding as additional fluff. The first copy is really good, but additional copies are obviously not so useful. So it's a no-brainer here. We're playing dark monsters. 3 copies of Allure of Darkness will allow us to not only dig for these pieces or our other combo pieces from our core, but it helps you get rid of some of this fluff because you just banish these spares that you no longer need for your combo, and then this holistically then becomes a very powerful package where you get extra monsters for Proxy Dragon, you get your extra access to Miracle Fusion, and then this just gives you more draw power for this and everything else that you have in the deck as well. So a lot of extra benefit coming from that pendulum engine, and it's just a really cool thing that it's able to come together like that. From here, I like playing 2 copies of Armageddon-Knight on top of the 3 Vion. That basically means now you have 2 additional ways you can pendulum summon these guys or rota them out, extra ways to dump a Destiny Hero Malicious to the graveyard, much like the 1 copy of Foolish Burial we'll be playing, because essentially, if you're able to get any of these guys, Malicious is a plus in this deck because it instantly turns 1 card into 2 free Mallies that you get out of your graveyard or from your deck essentially. So very powerful for this deck. It's a free Proxy Dragon or setup for Absolute Zero and your 𝗏𝗏𝗏, so definitely want to be playing these guys. You could play the 3rd Armageddon, but I needed a little more space, and the reason for that is I wanted to tech a single copy of Plague Spreader Zombie with the Armageddon Knights. That's why the 3 Vions for all of our hero plays, and then Armageddon Knights just for the extra consistency, and then this little number here. So Plague Spreader is a classic in these types of dark synchro decks. Essentially lets you go and kick back a card from your hand to the top of your deck in order to go and summon it from the graveyard. It's an extra monster, so you could use it for that, but it's also a tuner, and just off of Armageddon Knight and Plague Spreader Zombie, you can go for something like Stardust Charge Warrior. Hey, that lets you go and recoup the loss of your card returned, so then you can go ahead and make plays from there. If you happen to draw into Plague Spreader directly as well, then it becomes a great way of going and turning a 4 into a 6, and then bring back the Plague Spreader into a level 8 like Psyframe Lord Omega, which I play as the 1 level 8 in this deck, because now this can recycle Plague Spreader. It can recycle other banished cards, like maybe Shadow Mist was banished, and you could go send it to the grave to like revive with something like Monster Reborn down the line, or just disrupt your opponent with. Just interesting plays you're able to do with this mini package here. Basically gives you additional maneuverability in your deck, so that's not just too streamlined for that 1 combo in case things don't work out for you. And then the last 3 cards I want to talk about in the main deck are a 2nd copy of Shadow Mist, and yeah, that sounds really weird, right? But I'm only playing 2 copies of her because you saw I have 3 hero lives in order to fetch her out from the deck. That instantly gets me the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 play by getting me Mass Change. That's good. I want to draw a hero lives. I also want to draw Mass Change itself because I can use it on any of my heroes. Could be this, could be Mally, could be Vion, so lots of ways to trigger that. But if I draw Shadow Mist, I pretty much have to rely on drawing my Pendulum Engine or getting some other weird thing like a 𝕮𝗏𝗏𝗏 in order to actually make her useful. Sure, I could discard her, but that's a bit clunky, and so essentially I wanted 2 copies so that I always have access to 1 in the deck, but I don't have to rely on trying to, not draw it. Basically, this isn't the type of deck where you want to be drawing her. You'd rather draw other stuff. That's why we play the 2. You have maneuverability. You could throw 1 away, maybe try again later if you need more plays or if you get stopped or whatever. But just the 2 to make sure, you actually have access to her at most points in the game. Then I like playing the 1 Reborn, because this lets you go and bring back any key piece. It'll trigger things like Vion or Shadow Mist if you haven't used them already, so it gives you some more staying power for later in the game, and it's just an awesome card in general. And then last main deck choice is Instant Fusion, which is very funny in this deck because it lets us go for Elemental Hero Mariner, which serves multi-purpose here. This is an Elemental Hero, so that's already awesome. We can go and turn it into any of our monsters that we want from our extra. It's a warrior, so we can go with Sold. It's a water, so you can use this as your monster for your Absolute Zero play. And since Instant Fusion as a 1 of is a fusion spell, if you already drew your Miracle Fusion, and you already have Polymerization in your hand or whatever, just go and use the Predaplant engine to search your Instant Fusion, and now you have an extra monster that actually helps you in making your plays for Absolute Zero down the line. So very fun thing you can do, only costs you 1,000 life, and I think it's a very powerful addition for just a pair of 1-ofs in your main and your side deck. And the last thing now, believe it or not, we're already at the home stretch here, is to talk about the rest of our extra decks. So starting off with some of the fusion monsters, I like playing a second copy of Absolute Zero, kind of like I mentioned with the Miracle Fusion happens a lot, but sometimes with Poly you'll find, if you haven't used Poly to summon this the first time, you could use Poly that you search off Phaon to do this the later play. Essentially, you get to go and fuse your Ab-Zero into another Ab-Zero, and that proactively gets you the ability to get rid of your opponent's stuff. So I definitely like the second copy to do that. I like a copy of Masked Hero Acid. This is another thing where if you have your Elemental Hero Absolute Zero on the field, mass change it. This thing Harpy's Feather Dusters your opponent's spells and traps, and then if you do, all their monsters lose 300 attack permanently, which is already pretty good on a 26 body. But if you combine it with Absolute Zero, that's a field nuke, and if you have a Dark Law on the field, that banishes everything, so that just becomes absolutely nuts. And Masked Hero Acid can also be summoned off of Mass Change on your instant fusion target, the Mariner, as well, which is a pretty cool thing, because you just need a water monster off of Mass Change. So definitely like this as a one of. And then the last fusion is Elemental Hero 𝗣𝗏𝗃, which is just the generic dark Elemental Hero fusion. Its effect is okay, gains 100 attack for each Elemental Hero specifically in your graveyard. It starts off with 25, but this is to give you a little more flexibility with your fusion summoning. If you have polymerization, you need to send your, your Malicious to the grave or your Shadow Mist or whatever. It basically gives you something there. And if you have an extra Miracle Fusion, you already summoned your Ab-Zero, you want to keep it on the field, you could just go for 𝗣𝗏𝗃 because all your monsters are dark anyway, and you probably have the materials to summon this and just sweep. So that's the whole point of this. One additional synchro is F.A. Dawn Dragster. This is the first time I'm featuring this guy, so I'll read it real quick. But he's a level 7, 0 attack, 2000 defense, generic level 7 tuner, and basically says, it gains attack equal to its level times 300. Oh, so right off the bat, 2100 attack. It inflicts piercing damage at all points. That's pretty cool. And then each time an FA spell or trap is activated, you would gain 2 levels, or gain 1 level, excuse me. But we're not trying to play that, shows how much I care about that effect in this deck. We don't have any FA cards, so we're not going to reliably increase its level or anything. But the last effect really does matter. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a spell card or trap card or effect, as a quick effect, you can go ahead and decrease this card's level by 2 in order to negate that activation, and if you do, destroy that card. So it's basically a Shien, Legendary Six Samurai Shien that you can access for level 7s. Why am I playing this guy? Oh yeah, it's because when I do that combo, I end up with Grapple Angler and Destiny Hero Malicious very consistently. So if you didn't draw any good combo pieces, just throw this thing in defense position as a 2000 defender that has a Shien effect just for free. And you did all of that off of just one card in your hand, being the 𝗏𝗊. So definitely I think it's a nice thing to have in the extra deck. You could go with other things as well. You could try a Black Rose if you want to be proactive and destroy your opponent's field. But especially if you're going first, I think the Dawn Dragster is a nice, reliable defensive maneuver, and so that's why I ended up choosing that. I didn't want to destroy my established field using a Black Rose Dragon, essentially. So I chose Dawn Dragster, but there are a lot of different level 7s you could choose in this slot. So, Samurai Destroyer is pretty solid for breaking up boards as well, but I just chose the Dawn Dragster for its flexibility. And then the last 3 cards we're talking about here are just some Link monsters. Nightmare Goblin, this thing is really cool, so it has 2 big effects. First of all, just needs any 2 monsters with different names to summon. Oh, that's extremely easy in this deck, right? We're getting Mallies for free. Anything not Mally with it lets you go for this. Sometimes you go and use this instead of Proxy Dragon, or before Proxy Dragon, if you need its effect. So upon Link summon, you can go and discard a card from your hand. Oh, so that lets me claim Shadow Mist or Malicious or whatever. That's pretty good. And then if you do, if it's co-linked, you happen to draw another card. Remember, that's if you have arrows pointing to each other. So you'd have to have something like this for Proxy, nearby. But you don't care too much about that extra draw in this deck, because all you care about is if you did that discard effect, you get to normal summon 1 additional time this turn. Notice in this deck, I'm not playing my Gem Knight, Seraph Knight, so this is the only card that will give me an extra normal summon. It won't overlap with any other card, so it's always going to give me that extra normal summon when I discard, and from there, I can go and maybe drop down, the last combo piece I need to be able to go off into the rest of the board, because I already have a Sold here, I have this. Maybe I get to go and summon out an Armageddon Knight to yard something else, or I can go Goblinberg and special summon another monster. Lots of cool things you're able to do with the Nightmare Goblin, just through those effects. And then you don't care about its other effect. It's a co-link ability that basically protects your monsters from targeting. Troll target protection, basically, but don't need this thing. You just need it for the extra normal summon and the discard outlet. Plus, it's an easy monster to summon, so sometimes you'll just use it as, you know, a Kickstarter for your combos and then link it off from there. And then the last two cards are Link 4 monsters. So �11𝗨, if you don't play this in this deck, I mean, honestly, you could choose something else that's more based on power. But the reason I chose �11𝗨 is because it's just such a good card to invest into if you have no other better play. Like, this thing is going to steal your opponent's field and just steal games as a result. So it's really worth playing. It's one of the few monsters you would actually want to pour cards into, even if you don't get anything out directly from it, because it's able to steal your opponent's cards, get around weird board situations. And then Saryuja is similar, since you're able to go and get an extra special summon, gain attack points, and draw 4 using its ability. It's actually, again, one of the few cards you're actually willing to invest something into in order to get more out of it. There are some other things you could play as well. I considered for a while playing an extra �11𝗨 along with an Anki, which would give you a little more ability to use extra copies of Mass Change. That's definitely something you can see a lot in this deck. It's going to happen consistently enough that it's worth mentioning. I just chose this method here because I thought the power level and versatility provided by having one of each of these guys would be a lot more beneficial to me than just having kind of a mediocre consistent play in the deck. But it's just a suggestion of something that you can keep in mind. If you watched the video in its entirety, thank you very much. Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing the creation of this deck as much as I did putting this thing together. I admit it's slightly on the fragile end for my liking. It's been something I've been working on for a long time now though, so I'm actually glad with how it's been performing thus far. It's taken me by surprise, and I'm very much looking forward to see how this deck is able to evolve as we get some more cards and the theme continues to mature. But as a first look at this deck here, we have 40 cards in the main: double Armageddon Knight, triple Destiny Hero Malicious, single Honest Neos, double Elemental Hero Shadow Mist, a Goblin Berg, a Grapple Angler, and a Plague Spreader Zombie as some one-ofs. Then we have �11𝗨𝗑𝐽𝐵ra with 3 Ophris Scorpio for our Predaplant engine, triple Supreme King Darkworm, and 1 𝕮𝖆𝖇𝖑𝐿 for our Supreme King Pendulum engine. Then we have 3 of the All-Star Vision Hero Vyon to round out the monsters. Then for spells, we have triple A Hero Lives, you know, don't take this to time events, guys, but, you know, just for fun. We got triple Allure of Darkness, 1 DDR for our Isolde. Then we have Foolish Burial, 1 Instant Fusion as an alternative for our Predaplant play. Then we have triple Mass Change for 𝗏𝗏, triple Miracle Fusion for Absolute Zero and other shenanigans, Monster Reborn to get some combo pieces out, Poly for searching off Vyon, and then our Rhoda, because of course it is the mighty Rhoda. And then from there, our extra deck is also 15. We have for Link 2's Isolde, then we have a Nightmare Goblin and a Proxy Dragon. Then we have 𝗤𝗏 Dragon and the mighty Saryuja at Link 4, and that's it for these guys. You could honestly build some more of these, but I just figured let's go with that so we could play some synchro monsters. So off the Plague Spreader Zombie, we have Stardust Charge Warrior, and eventually a Psyframe Lord Omega. And then off of your Isolde play, we have the FA Dawn Dragster to kind of solidify your board off of that free Grapple Angler. Then we have for fusions, Destiny Hero Dangerous, Elemental Hero Mariner for an instant fusion target, double Absolute Zero, and Escaradao, Masked Hero Acid, and Masked Hero 𝗏𝗏 to round out the lineup. That's the end of this video, but if you'd like to see more of this series, you can click the annotation on the right, or you can see the last video I did by clicking the one on the left. If you enjoyed, I encourage you guys to leave a like and share it with others you think who may enjoy it as well. And if you'd really like to see more updates, then subscribe to JD Gaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks guys, this is JD Gaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.